Right now, I've got somebody that wants to talk to you about a place from the middle of the country, the other side of the Appalachians in Tennessee. Hey there, I got a different kind of accent than that. My name's Jay Statzer, and I work with the Cures Not Wars, especially the Cures aspect of Cures Not Wars in the state of Michigan. Now, before 9/11, we were having our own national tragedy in Vandalia, Michigan, a place called Rainbow Farm. And I'm going to tell the story of that in a little bit. It's a hard thing. I've been trying to put it out of my mind because two of my friends are dead. So if you're smoking, throw a little something over your shoulder for the two brothers who couldn't be here today. One that was shot dead by the Michigan State Police, the other that was shot dead by the FBI. But what I wanted to talk about was cannabis. Because the Cures Not Wars believes cannabis deserves to be legalized in all its forms. It's getting dire now. The technology of fascism is such that we're going to lose our freedoms in a systematic way through technology like we never imagined through military or police brutality. And so it's dire. We can't wait for just medical and industrial initiatives to go through. Now this year South Dakota is going to have a very strong industrial and a separate medicinal state ballot initiative, which I believe is going to go through. And Alaska's got all and out legalization for the people up there that creates some freedom. In Michigan, we had what was called the Personal Responsibility Amendment. And the Personal Responsibility Amendment would decriminalize personal private use of marijuana to make any amount in your home and the growth of up to 3 plants allowable in the state of Michigan. It would also legalize the medicinal and legalize the industrial and do away with asset forfeitures as we know them. We came up realistically, we came up 35,000 signatures short to get this on the ballot. What was the problem? The problem was we had 25 full-time petitioners for a state, and we needed to gather 301,000 signatures to get this on the ballot. It died because of lack of manpower. And in D.C. we have an initiative going. In 20 states of the Union, we can have these initiatives. So go back to your state and participate and get the signatures out there, because manpower is the only thing keeping these things off the ballot now, because I was pulled in some serious approval ratings for marijuana in all its forms in the state of Michigan, petitioning from Detroit all the way back to Lake Michigan and the coast. And we can't wait to have other petitions until we get our recreational cannabis use situation resolved. And it's not resolved, and medical isn't going to resolve it. Medical is good because we'll have medical patients using it, and they won't all go insane and become axe murderers, and we'll finally have the proof of how safe cannabis is. And industrial, of course, you know, that punishes all the industries that made cannabis illegal in the first place, so that's a good thing. But you can't have one without the other, which means you have to get the recreational use issue off the table before you can have it. You can always have legal medical marijuana, and then you'll have the fine geniuses here in D.C. deciding that they can override the will of the people on the state level in direct violation of our own Constitution and several state constitutions. And you'll always have that until you get recreational use legalized. The other thing is industrial. You know, we can have this Frankenweed that's going to be 0.05% THC in the buds guaranteed if you even grow it that long. And you'll always have some DEA bureaucrat coming over to your farm telling you, oh, that's 0.05% THC too much, you're going to have to burn your whole farm down. Not burn your farm down, burn your whole crop down. As a slip of the tongue, it's bouncing around in my head what happened in Vandalia, Michigan, where a farm burned down. What we'd like to call Rainbow Ridge. You see, a man named Tom Crosland and his life partner Roland Rom had a son, 12-year-old son at the time, living on this farm in southwest Michigan, where when you walked in for an event like Hemp on Memorial Day weekend, or Roach Roast on Labor Day weekend, or 420 on any of the holidays, or Weed Fest when High Times came through, you felt like you were in another country. It's the same feeling I get when I visit the Oglala Lakota on Pine Ridge Reservation. You feel like you're in another country, and when you get enough people, like we have today, we have a quorum. We have a certain number of people required to express our freedom in the society. Imagine that, you know, times 10. And you have a city basically that springs up for a weekend, and all the services are provided, and great showers, clean porta potties, great entertainment, and lots of political activity. Lots of people speaking their minds, people from all over the country coming to do Rainbow Farm. Petitions passed every year. Politicians running for office on the alternative tip. A very political activity that they call a party, that they called something bad. It was just, they wouldn't even honor it to call it civil disobedience. And so they send in their infiltrators and they hassle it. Rainbow Farm came from another event. Is there anyone here from Wisconsin or anyone who's ever been to Weedstock? That's Ben Mazel's event, Weedstock. A man named Max Robinson from Indiana was inspired by Weedstock and put together in LaPorte, Indiana, what was called Yasgur's Memorial, watch out for the feedback there, Yasgur's Memorial Independence Camp. And the DEA, based on alleged witnessing of horrible things like defecation on the sidewalks and trash strewn everywhere, there was a public health hazard describing Ben Mazel's event in Wisconsin, which anyone who's been there knows is a very well-organized, very clean, very green event. And it was a very successful event. The last 2 years they haven't been allowed to have it because it was tied up in court. I went to Weedstock's re-inauguration this year, and it was a beautiful event. Some 80 people showed up because you have to look at it as a first-time annual event now. But they can't stop Ben Mazel. But they stopped Max Robinson at Independence Camp. What they did is they lied, the DEA agent, this lying DEA slut, lied to a judge in LaPorte, Indiana, and got a court order blocking the gathering, calling it a public health hazard. And I can just imagine, I mean, I have the testimony from Max Robinson, telling me what he was put through in that trial, but I mean, they're up there and they have, the stigmatization going so strong, it's like, oh yeah, just all those hippies, thousands of hippies, the BO alone would be a public health threat, and it just, so they lie and they get a court order blocking it. They also faxed all the radio stations and told them to get on the air and say the event was canceled. Probably one of the latter-day re-originations of the requirement of having ignore all rumors of cancellation at the bottom of your flyer for your event. Because that's what they did. They lied first and said it was canceled, and then they went to court and lied to make their lie come true. And I threw down sound system. A landowner graciously put everything he had into allowing people to camp on his land. And he lost his ass, lost his property, lost everything he invested into it. Max Robinson was left without a location to try it again. I came up with my little tape recorder trying to get into the place in the first place with the county police saying, would you please explain to the ACLU screening committee how you have the authority to not deny me entrance into this event? And him just saying, well, get out of my face. We're the servant of the court. I'm hiding behind the law. I don't have to deal with you. Of course, I got in anyways. Lots of people got in anyways. All it really did was postpone the event because the court order blocked the event for 4 days over July 4th. And it happened for 3 days after the scheduled closing date of the event. And then Max went to Michigan, to Southwest Michigan, where Tom Crosland heard about Independence Camp and was so pissed that the event had been stopped like that he offered up his own farm and made a place where people could go and have an event like Ben Mazel's event, Weedstock. And it was a beautiful thing. That's the city they set up with all the services and roads and clean toilets and everything you want to be a hippie camping in the woods and experiencing American freedom better than you can experience it in Washington, D.C. And so what do? They say, oh, it was a terrible thing. We're going to go screaming to the media about how it's an open-air drug market and how it's a naked hippie slide in front of the children, and there's no protest going on. There's no free speech going on. It's just about wanton behavior. Well, they tried it for 3 years, and they couldn't get it shut down. Finally, they had to use a tax angle to come in on the property and shut it down days before the Roach Roast event in September. And right when they have everything invested in putting the event together, they came in with the tax ban and shut it down and founded a grow operation, which if you're going to do a public event, don't have a grow operation on the property. Don't give them any excuses. Because we got to live as if it's a time of war. We have to conduct ourselves as soldiers now. I mean, we knew the rhetorical war had been declared against us. Now it's a real war, right? And they don't use guns. They technology of fascism, like methadone, some of the earlier technologies of fascism that's used to capture us. So remember Rainbow Farm. And another farm that I'm hoping to visit, if anyone here likes to travel, go to South Dakota, just south of where Mount Rushmore National Park is. The Oglala Lakota live on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation there. And this, what I have in my hand here, is a sample of the first legally grown industrial hemp on U.S. soil since the Controlled Substances Act was passed. This was grown by Alex White Bloom, a proud man, a man who had been a police officer, a man who had been a Marine, a man who had been on the tribal council, which would be the equivalent of being a senator here. This man was no criminal. This guy was engaging in no sort of criminal enterprise. It was industrial hemp to create food and fiber for the people on the reservation who are living in the badlands where nothing else grows. But hemp grows excellently there. Imagine 3 acres standing this tall over my head, waving in the wind. And then, of course, the military helicopters come and their black SUVs, and the federal agencies should have been watching our borders, are instead raiding the Oglala Lakota Nation to cut down the first legally grown hemp in 2000, and again to cut it down in 2001. The first year they grew 3 acres, 2 farmers. The second year it was 1 farmer, he grew 6 acres. This year, several farmers, I'm not even sure how many people have planted, but 30 acres planted this year. That's what happens when you piss off the Sioux. They ratchet it up a little bit. In Michigan, we ratcheted it up. We had a Millennium Marijuana March. This is the shirt from that in 2000 in Lansing. In 2001, we had 4 locations. This year, we had 5 locations. Maybe another 5 or 6 next year. Because we're going to keep growing it until we can get the law changed in Michigan. Because Michigan is one of the states that has the ballot initiative process that will make this legal. And then we'll see if they'll cut down white people's hemp. I say it stops here. We can't wait. It's a dire situation, and we need to get the recreational issue solved. And there's 2 ways to do that. First of all, we need to separate recreational cannabis, i.e. marijuana, from hard drugs. And it's pretty easy to do. All you got to do is ask which one's addictive and which one's not. And if you doubt whether or not marijuana is addictive, learn about ibogaine and learn about melatonin, and you'll find out that marijuana does not affect the same parts of the brain that every other addictive drug does. And that's how you can tell the difference. And then the second thing you got to do is you got to have your pot pride, because there's so much misinformation and lies about cannabis and marijuana out there that even the stoners believe it, because they just don't have an authoritative source to get the truth. You know, that was cut off, a couple decades ago, authoritative facts about it. I lambasted my DARE officer at a park festival in Indiana, and I asked him, what do you know about addiction? You're trying to tell me that marijuana is addictive. What do you know about addiction? What happens if you don't get your heroin? And the cop's like, you commit crimes, I guess, to get money for your... No, I said, let's say you got the money. Let's say you don't get your heroin. What happens? And then I did John Lennon's Cold Turkey for him. And then I asked him the same question about marijuana. So what happens if you don't get your marijuana? Are you writhing on the floor because of that? And he goes, same answer. You commit crimes in order to get money. I said, let's say you got the money and you just can't find your dealer. What happens if you don't get your marijuana? Finally, stunned silence. His brain's opened up now. He's starting to think. And I said, this is what happens. You eat, you go to bed, and you forget about it. Tough luck, maybe you'll get some the next day. Chances are, if you're a cool hippie like me who's grown up outside of the general drug education, and my drug education separates marijuana from hard drugs, and my drug education makes sense. My drug education turned a teenage alcoholic into a pothead. And like Dana said for us over the phone, basically, in Lansing this year, we want to turn an alcohol and nicotine society into a marijuana society. So remember Rainbow Farm, remember Alex White Bloom, remember to tip your bartenders and waitresses, and free the weed. Smoke them if you got it. Cures, not wars. Now we'll get Mr. Palka up here to schedule another speaker. Maybe we'll hear some more about the initiative in D.C. for medical marijuana. I like that one. In Detroit, we have one that takes arrests for medical marijuana makes it minimum priority. They have a similar law like that in Seattle. The city of Detroit tried to block putting that on the ballot just because I guess the words in it are naughty or something. There's no legal reason why, but they've done maneuvers trying to block it, and of course they can't. So we'll be sharing some freedom with DC hopefully next year.
Okay, so that's the Rainbow Farm in Michigan, and I guess what he's talking about is our brothers and sisters getting shot down for their lifestyles and the way they choose to live, and it's a very unfortunate incident, and there's a lot of our brothers and sisters that aren't here today with us, that are with us here in spirit in a sense, and this guy died this year that was like the local DC Normal Chapter president for years and years, Skippy Bush, died of leukemia just a couple of months ago, and I know a couple of nights ago I had a dream that he came up and he wanted to speak right here at this rally, but he couldn't, because he's not here with us today, but I'm sure he would have wanted to participate and support what all of you are out here to do today. And just remember, there's a lot of people all over the world, and especially right here in the country, different kinds of people are at this very moment, like you are, gathering not out of fear, but out of